I hope this finds the right side of TikTok, but does life feel weird to anybody else? Like, whatever your situation may be, if you're in America, not in America, believe in God, don't believe in God, work a corporate job, work from home, unemployed, like whatever your situation may be, wherever you're located in the world, does life feel weird to you right now? Because to me, not only is life absolutely flying by, I almost feel like I can't keep up with it. Weeks go by now just like days used to. And this is weird to say, but I really sometimes feel like I lose track of time during the day. It almost feels like we had more time in each day a few years ago than we do now. But not only that, just day to day, normal living, does life feel weird to you? Does it feel almost fake to you right now? Because it honestly feels like a fever dream right now, and we need to wake up. And I don't know how else to describe it, but it just feels weird to me. It just feels fake. And I'm a Christian, right? So I believe that this is a spiritual battle. I believe that demons and angels are all around us at all times, and it's literally active in another dimension all around us. But lately, it just feels a little different even than that. It literally feels fake, and I don't know how else to describe it, but I need to know if anybody else feels this way too.
Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025. We're going out of the Matrix into Prime Reality on this show. Thank you for joining us on X, Rumble, and YouTube, and thank you to our wonderful moderators, Ronnie and Raymond, aka Two Steps Behind. You guys are fantastic. Thank you for the great work and support. Of course, my wonderful wife, Christine, as the wise thumbs in the live chat, inspired in a live chat. And you all, thank you for being here with us. You heard it in the intro. You feel it. Most everybody feels it. And people ask themselves very often these days, what the heck's actually going on? Why is everything so weird? Why is everything so strange? Why can't we, seem to get a grip on things again? And I want to rewind some 17, 18 years ago when Christine and I made the decision that we were going to pack up our kids, a few suitcases and boxes of personal stuff, and move far, far out into the wilderness of Canada. We decided to move as far from civilization as we could, found us a nice little place. And once we had made that decision, absolutely everything had gone wrong that could go wrong. It was like Murphy's Law. And we ended up not leaving civilization, so to speak, and continued the work that we're doing here today in various forms. We had done it before, and we're doing it in this form now. But the point being that life felt very, or let's just say reality felt very strange to us even back then. So there are many people who have actually felt this time coming, who could sense it, who could sense the beginning stages of it, or who could feel the acceleration. And I want to play one clip here for you by a guy named Terence McKenna. Some of you might remember him. He was like a philosopher. And here's a clip from him from 27 years ago, 1998. He explains 2025 pretty accurately, actually.
Weirder. The level of contradiction is going to rise excruciatingly, even beyond the excruciating present levels of contradiction. So I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. And at that point, novelty theory can come out of the woods, because eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's just too nuts. It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. I look for the invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, possible human immortality, and at the same time, appalling acts of brutality, genocide, race baiting, homophobia, famine, starvation, because the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed. The collapse of the socialist world, the rise of the internet, these are changes so immense, nobody could imagine them ever happening. And now that they have happened, nobody even bothers to mention what a big deal it is. The mushroom said to me once, it said, "This is what it's like when a species prepares to depart for the stars. You don't depart for the stars under calm and orderly conditions. It's a fire in a madhouse." And that's what we have, the fire in the madhouse at the end of time. This is what it's like when a species prepares to move on to the next dimension. The entire destiny of all life on the planet is tied up in this. We are not acting for ourselves or from ourselves. We happen to be the point species on a transformation that will affect every living organism on this planet at its conclusion.
So this is what Terence McKenna said. I don't even want to come to a conclusion right now. I would like to explore in quite an exhaustive way, if you will, some of the factors that we can know or at least can assume to know. These are important distinctions. So in other words, what is causing this? Why are so many people feeling strange? Why are and you could fairly, if you could say, hey, this is the phenomenon of the internet. It's driving people crazy. We're going to talk about that. It is a factor. But my grandma, who passed away last year, at the ripe age of 95 years, she said to me, probably one of the last times we spoke, she said, the world has gotten so strange. And she was a very, very simple woman, never logged on the internet, and didn't have, like, in a lot of communication in her last years with the outside world. And still she felt this way. And then there are people who live very simple lives, and indigenous people who live very simple lives. And everybody describes one version of the strangeness, the weirdness of our time. So what can we know? What would explain some of this? I think we're underestimating, for example, environmental factors. And there's so much playing into this. There's no simple answer, okay? These are complex issues, but one is environmental factors, poisons, frequencies, EMFs, geoengineering, drugs, medical interventions. Now, these things have existed for a while, but it is the compound effect that is causing disturbances in our field within ourselves, that when they compound, the effects, of course, compound. So you see lethargic behavior in people more than there's ever been. You see zombification of the people more than there's ever been, and not necessarily in highly aggressive ways yet. It's more a apathy, blank stares, no real dialogue with people, a sort of reclusive behavior. um, all of these things are visible. We see an uptick like never before in prescription drugs. The prescription drugs epidemic is really that, in North America, some 70+% of the population are on prescription drugs. Now, that's not, counting the other drug users or people who get prescription meds without prescription. So I think in the self-medicating world, we're 80% of the people are self-medicating in some way, shape, or form. Then you have the involuntary use of drugs, which people don't really consider, is that all the wastewater from the people, that and the water that's being cleaned and recycled, some of those compounds don't really leave the cycle. And so, you're getting some of those drugs. Then, of course, it's been proven through many whistleblowers and declassified documents that experiments in the past were conducted on populations all over the world with mass drug, aerosol drug spraying and stuff like that. So we have to take these factors into consideration. Geoengineering, what does it do to our psyche? What does it do to our emotional and hormonal balance when these heavy metals and other compounds that we might not even know about are being sprayed in the air day in, day out, and seep into the soil and the water and the food and through our skin, and we ingest them and inhale them. And those are all factors that we can't possibly know the effects of. Then we're talking about frequencies, EMFs, since just in the last 5-6 years, it has, it has exponentially increased cell phone towers, low orbit satellite, beam and 5G, 6G is beginning. And in addition to all the incredible amount of devices that now receive and emit signals, including, of course, the human body. We know this through the research of Sabrina Wallace, just how far along this whole thing is. So what I'm saying is the environmental factors that affect our sensing of reality, how we feel about it, are most definitely there, and most definitely very, very intensified. So this can cause all kinds of chemical alterations within our bodies that would make everything seem very strange. And this is just one factor, right? Then the way that we're consuming information, our constant exposure to screens, the internet, news, it is not even to speak, which we're going to get to, is the AI content, which is flooding the scene, which makes it now possible that we have an ever ongoing stream of new content created to infinity, because there's no limits with AI. And our nervous systems, our brain, our emotional systems are constantly overstimulated and overloaded. We're basically experiencing the reality of millions and billions of people through this screen as though we were there, because our brains don't know the difference. So we are participating in traumatizing world events constantly through the consumption of mass media and social media. Unlike any generation, this has never happened before in known history. Never in known history was a typhoon that happened in Southeast Asia, which is a horrible thing, but never before did it affect populations across the earth in such intense ways, because they were in it through their screens, and their brains registered it as though they were there, because that's what our brains do. That's what our subconscious reads. So we have this overstimulation, this constant over information, and our brains no longer know what is the signal, what is the noise, what do we actually need to know. Truth is, horrible as it is, but if you live in Cleveland, Ohio, you don't really need to know that a typhoon just hit South Korea. It might affect some economic things. Of course, it affects people there, and that is bad. Like, don't get me wrong. It's not about empathy, but do you really need to know the ins and out of all this, and how can you possibly assist in that situation? So you see, we have to ask those questions. And what does it do to us? Naturally, this has intensified in the last 5 years with the one world event, which was the COVID hoax, right? That was the one world event that everybody participated in. And that has really caused a breakdown of our psychological structures and societal structures. And we have never dealt with that. We haven't done any trauma healing on that, which, think about it. 9/11 traumatizing event, world wars traumatizing events, but never before in our known history has something happened to all of us at the same time and was communicated in the same way to all of us at the same time, and was dividing us in the same way at the same time. This has never happened before. This was like, what the 2020 event was the closest thing that we have to consider what a big disclosure event might be like, because it was the first time that the entire world focused on one thing and one thing only for extended periods of time. Now, some little pockets of the world kind of tuned out quickly, but for the most part, that's how it was. Um, so we're looking at this informational overload that clearly our brains, our psyche, our emotional body weren't designed to deal with. We were not designed to be bombarded with this kind of information, which leads me to the next part. And we're going to get into the really strange parts too, by the way, because there are some really strange parts as to why we feel so weird about everything. But it's psychological operations. And you've heard this term. Virtually every government in the world has probably multiple divisions named differently, but they focus on psychological operations, either targeted at targeting the enemy, but mostly now targeting the native population. PSYOPs in short. And these are, basically, these are hidden operations where things or information is being put out to the public and with a very specific purpose to affect change in behavior, to affect change in perception. It's very sophisticated, and they happen now at a never before seen pace. In basically the entire media apparatus, the entire government apparatus, and basically any country now is a constant psyop, a constant psychological operation. And what that also means is that we never really hear the truth about anything anymore. The question is, did we ever? In the past, the difference was that there were coherent stories that were sort of that remained for a long time, months and years, sometimes forever, coherent stories. So we have in recent years, the coherence was deleted, and our shared knowledge of something was deleted as well, because we now no longer have the truth about anything. We just have different versions of an event, for example, and different belief systems around it. But what that does is it creates such a level of uncertainty in the human psyche, because it seems like to the ruling class, if you want to call them that, coherence and continuity of information doesn't matter any longer. It used to be that they needed to control the narrative about something. That's not so much the case any longer. The narrative keeps flipping and changing every day, and the population seems to accept that. You look at any, popular, if there is such a thing, at any popular leader right now, there's almost no coherence in their communication. It's one day this, the next day it's different. The messaging keeps changing, and people just seem to accept it, even when it contradicts itself, which is so often does. So we must ask the question, why? Why do coherence and continuity not matter anymore? This is where we get into why reality really feels so strange, and talk about the stranger things. I truly believe that we're in a transitioning period leading up to what so many people call a reset event, and in other words, the preparation for this event itself, or event period, we don't know, is more important now than the coherence and the continuity of stories. So it doesn't matter to the people in charge any longer whether the facade is beautiful or whether the story makes sense any longer. It only matters that the moving pieces are being put into place. It's a vastly different strategy. And that's why there's confusion. That's why there's uncertainty. And that doesn't matter any longer. This would have been addressed in the past. The past was all about keeping people in sort of in check. They were not supposed to question things because they were still needed much more than now. They needed to build the infrastructure. Their workforce was needed. They were needed. People are becoming increasingly less important for building infrastructure, and more so in the next years. They will be replaced to a large degree by AI, robotics, hybrids, those kinds of things. And so the importance simply is not here anymore, maybe for other reasons, but not for workforce. So then the stories begin to sort of break down, and they don't care. It seems that they're putting these new systems into place for after the reset, and that is now the most important thing. Truth, coherence, continuity be damned. So this is another factor of why we feel that reality is broken down, because it has. Then, of course, we have, this, I hinted at this, the breakdown of societies, which through the rift, specifically since 2020, the rift that has gone through communities, that has gone through faith communities, political parties, families, partnerships, marriages, down to the most intimate unit, right? Men and women. How many couples were split on the issue, on completely opposite sides, right? And have never truly dealt with that rift, have never truly tried to rebuild or find common ground, but have since sort of lived in a split existence. Yes, they live life together, but for the most part, they know they're in different belief systems and different modes of living. And this has caused the breakdown of communication as well. So we used to have our trusted partners, whether that was our spouses, our siblings, or parents, or children, best friends, where we had conversations where we could reflect things and bounce things off of each other, and work through things. That has gone away. So for the last 5 years, most people were alone with their thoughts, with their grief, with their pain, with their experiences, and have no more intact communication channels to deal with that, right? So that causes a breakdown of our rituals, and the last remaining rituals for reflection and healing. And 5 years in, we're now experiencing the severe effects of that trauma that is unhealed, which causes you to question, even if you're not a quote unquote conspiracy realist or somebody who's actually looking behind things, but it causes you to question the validity of everything you've been taught. And from a mainstream perspective, this is also happening, but it's happening mainly in a destructive way to people, where they go, so we've gone through all this shit. All my life, I've been taught that I need to study, I need to get good grades, I need to get an education, I need to get a job, I need to pay my taxes, fill out the forms, and then all of a sudden, all of that wasn't valid anymore. For a year or two, in some cases 3 years, it wasn't valid. Those things all of a sudden didn't matter any longer, or weren't as important, or were flexible. And now they were told, well, now we're going back to it matters again. It's important again. It causes people to just, what the fuck? Like, how? Like, we have clearly lived through a time where everything was different. How can we just switch back? And that switch back, of course, doesn't work any longer. That's why we've said so long, there is no more normal. There is no normal to return to. There's no how it used to be. And the reaction of many people is to look for a time in their lives when they felt really safe and secure in their structures, when they felt really connected. Maybe that was the 60s for some, the 80s for others, the 90s for others. Doesn't matter. Everybody has their time period where they felt, oh, things were much better then. There's no returning to that, because when we are honest with ourselves, that was unreality. Every decade was unreality. We have lived in unreality. And what we're now experiencing is the awakening to that unreality. We're actually realizing that it was all fake. It was all false. Not every interaction was false. Not what humans felt was false, But the structures, the stories, the justifications, all of that was fake. It was fake 20 years ago, it was fake 50 years ago, it's fake 100 years ago, it's fake now. But now on a systemic level, enough critical mass systemic level, which is a few percent, people are seriously seeing it, right? And this causes a rift and a psychological effect that makes makes everything seem incredibly strange, because it is. Then, and here it gets even weirder, and here I'm speaking purely intuitive, I cannot possibly prove this, then we're experiencing, in my perception, I've always felt some of this, but nothing like recently, continual timeline shifts. And there's the individual timeline. Like, you are shifting when you're making significant enough changes in your life. You're literally shifting your reality. And you could say that as a timeline shift. You're shifting over to a slightly different timeline, if you will, if you want to use that terminology. So your reality changes by a few percent. And the more that you are consistent with it, the more it changes. And you can do that for as much as you want. That's your reality bubble. But what I'm talking about are collective shifts. And these can be caused by changes in our perceived past, or potentially even by changes in our perceived future, which only we seem to experience in this kind of linear way. It might be different in other dimensions. But what that means is, I believe that through either, let's just say, paranormal or psychic abilities in some sense of form, or through technological means, things in our perceived past are being constantly changed. So much so that we feel some of the resets, smaller resets. So some part of our reality was changed. And we wake up one morning and reality is slightly shifted. And our entire nervous system, our emotional body, our psyche, everything needs to adjust to the new circumstances, right? On a soul level, if you will, on a spirit level, you could probably feel that, but your body is just adjusting to the new. And that seems to be happening a lot. Why that would be done? It's a good question. Well, if you needed changes faster than humanity can possibly handle, then you could alter something in a timeline that instantly shifts something. Also, there's the idea that our awakening process has accelerated so much that one of the last remaining tools for the opposing force, if you will, is to go and change things in our perceived past to slow it down or to shift us in a different direction. And so I believe both on the good side and on the bad side of this equation, changes are being made. It's like a timeline war, if you will. And that, I believe, is happening and is causing strange phenomena, from Mandela effects to deja vu, synchronicities, time glitches, timeline glitches. The stories are increasing of people that have a memory of something, and they can't replicate that event. um, I just heard yesterday an interesting story about a toddler toy, or a toy, and that toy is not connected to the internet. It is not AI. It's a very dumb, simple toy with a few programmed phrases. But so my friend had only heard a phrase once, and that toy only has a set number of phrases, and she tried to replicate the experience, but the toy would never say that phrase again. No matter how often she pushed a button, it would just go through all the programmed phrases. Um, and to her, it felt like a timeline shift or a Mandela effect. And so many people have these, or that, a distinct memory, a birthday, a parent's birthday that changes, even a birth year. How do you forget that? You don't forget that. Like, once you remember your parent's birth year, you don't forget that. And all of a sudden it's 5 years, behind, or, so all of these things might be just little signs of subtle changes in our past and in our reality. Then, of course, we're also talking about the change in the electromagnetic field. We are, after all, electric beings. There are huge shifts in the electromagnetic field of the Earth. We are highly affected by solar events, our proximity to the sun, where we keep getting closer and to the central sun. And so we have these effects and solar storms that come in at a much higher rate. So we have this incredible plethora of factors, and those are just the ones that we know about or we can know about. And then there's probably a lot of those that we don't know about that are still affecting us on a daily basis. Clearly, there is a common theme here. Most people feel very strange about reality, about events. Nothing seems true anymore. People call this the post-truth era, and to say that this is not valid or that these are just mass psychosis phenomena, I wouldn't be so fast. I would really think a little deeper, research a little deeper, and then also consider changes that you can make. I will tell you a personal story. We've recently moved from a more densely populated area with more technology, more towers, more everything. And we weren't even in a really dense area, just more dense. We moved out more out into the country where there's far less, and I don't even know where the next tower is. Reception is spotty and bad. And so our experience has shifted dramatically in the last few months. We could feel, even though we had all these protection protocols in place and EMF mitigation protocols like FLFE, which is amazing, how we were very conscious about devices turning off, internet, all of that, but still, our nervous system was constantly bathing in those frequencies. And it caused we didn't know until we were out here long enough. We didn't know that here's the interesting part. It caused a state of nervousness, and nervous is the wrong word because we never felt nervous, but it's just it's a heightened everything. Like, how do I describe this? It's literally like you can feel electricity, like you feel more electricity in your body than is good for you. You feel everything constantly, and of course, there's houses close by, there's tons of Wi-Fi networks and 5Gs and that is constantly affecting you. And when you bathe in it long enough, you don't know any longer. So then when you step out into nature long enough and you're in your bare feet and your nervous system begins to relax. Your senses begin to relax. You're not overstimulated, and don't need to work at it so much all the time. And there is a sense of you can breathe better, literally. So this is partially why I've been saying that people make any and all plans, take action, change your reality bubble for the better. If you felt that you should probably get out of a very densely populated area, follow that. When you set your intention, when you focus your attention on that, when you invest your time in that, and you envision it and you feel it, and you use things like the future memory technique, where this is something I love to use. Like, if there is a change I want to make in my life that's significant that I don't know currently how to, I go to a future date. I imagine, let's say, February 2026. And I imagine a typical Tuesday in February 2026. And I see myself sitting there, eyes closed, and I feel the memory of my desired event having come into my reality. I feel the memory of it from a future perspective. I remember what it felt like when it happened. I remember what it felt like when I received it or it came into my life. This is what I call future memory technique. And I practice that. And it becomes an enshrined reality, and then life begins to shift in that direction. This is something that anyone can do. But people say all the time, Jean, don't talk so much about land. Most people will never be able to get land. Don't talk about this because we can't afford it. And, you can stay in that perspective if you feel that serves you. If it feels good to you to feel that way and think that way, by all means. But if you would love to experience something else, I would suggest you do something else. Do what you can with what you have where you are. It's nothing more, nothing less. And you can't tell me that you can't use something like the future memory technique to shift your entire being into a different direction. You can. So, what do I think will happen moving forward? Will things get stranger? Yes. I agree with Terrence McKenna. Simply because society's train is still rolling in the same direction. And the reason why things are stranger is because society is still moving further away from the truth on average. Meaning it's still moving into this. The fundamental belief system is that more technology will make everything better. While, if you look at the progression of technology, and I don't want to say everything's bad, everything's good, but if you look at the general direction, the state that we're in now, it was caused by the modernization, the progress, and the technologization, if that's a word, of the world. That's what caused fundamentally so many of these effects that we're feeling, so many of the sicknesses, of the perversions, of the inverted consciousness. So we've steered away from this, and the nature of things, the truth about things, is the antidote, is the healing serum. And the only thing that we can know right now in this reality from a physical perspective is if you take an apple, and if you take the seeds out of an apple and you plant them, what's going to grow? An apple tree. It's never going to be peach. It's never going to be plum. It's always going to be an apple. We can know that. We can replicate that over and over and over again. We can find, truths in our nature to guide us, to give us a sense of consistency, to give us a sense of reality. I'm not saying that it's the ultimate one. You know where I stand on this. You know that I think this is a construct or an overlay, if you will, but it connects us with something in the right direction. And so when people are in doubt about how they can experience something that's real and truthful, it's literally just go with nature. Go with what nature does. You will feel more aligned, more in sync. It will expand your awareness. It will expand your sense for truth. It will make you feel more truthful about yourself. So this is where I suggest people begin. And then it is this, this last little bit of savior complex that people still have. It's like this, maybe, if humanity only finds out about all these things, they'll do something. No. What is there not to find out? There's now such an availability of information about chemtrails, poisons, medicine, pharma, fluoride, food dyes, geoengineering, pesticides. It doesn't matter. There's enough information. It's not about information. You know what humanity will do when they find out about all these things? Nothing. Because the vast majority of people don't do anything. They can't. They don't care enough. They don't have the capacity. I don't know exactly. But what I can tell you is that about 1 to 3% of the population creates all the change 100% of the time. Historically and present, that's how it is. The rest follows. The rest are followers, and that might be an eternal truth. I don't know. I sure hope not, but I don't know. What I do know is that 1 to 3% of the population create all the change. And it starts with individuals. It starts with individual reality bubble shifts. Right? That's where you have the most power. So you can give in to this feeling of strangeness and weirdness and just sort of in despair, hopelessness, not knowing, or you can find something that grounds you, walks with your animals, being out in nature, staring at a lake or a river. Man, climb up a tree, do something that feels grounded, balanced, and then realize that you have so much more power than you ever thought. 1 to 3% of the people change everything, always, at all times. The rest follows. So, we can either leave that field to those inverted forces, or we can take over that field and create something beautiful that others might want to go along, because that's the only way. It's voluntary. There's no other way. And that's been our message. That is the message, that you are absolutely 100% the creator of your reality, and that ultimately you can find a way to take control back from all of those fields that you can't currently feel out of control. So whether that's your nutrition, whether that's your thoughts, whether that's your financial circumstances, you have the ability to take control back over all those things and shift them into where you want them to be. It doesn't mean everything is perfect from here on out, but you have the ability. It's actually your responsibility and no one else's. And I wish that people would give themselves a little more credit. You know, there is no fixed reality as such that's immovable or unshakable, especially not your personal one, especially not that one. That one isn't fixed. But if you live by default, it's just going to be what it has been. And it's going to, whatever tendencies it has, those are going to increase. If there's a tendency that things go wrong in your reality, where those tendencies are going to increase until you change something, which is here, changing this, changing how you feel about it, changing how you think about it, changing what you say to yourself, changing what your conversations with you are, changing what you think about you. How can you have a beautiful divine experience of life if you think you're a loser? If you think that you're worthless, if you think that you can never get ahead, or you can never make things happen, things always go wrong for you. Well, how can that happen? It can't. Beautiful thing. The hidden message here is, you don't need to wait for anyone. You don't need permission from anyone else. You don't need anyone else to do this. It's all you. It's all you. And the only thing that you can say to yourself whenever you feel like, oh, I don't have enough of this, I can't do that, it's not possible, this has never worked for me before, Jean, you don't understand, my situation is completely unique. Do what you can with what you have where you are. Let me repeat that. Do what you can with what you have where you are. It eliminates all excuses. And if it's only a small step that you can take today, take it. Do what you can with what you have where you are. All right, friends. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for the expansion that we're on together, for the conversations that we share on all platforms. One of the most beautiful things that has happened in our lives in the last years is something we didn't plan for, which is the creation of the community on Locals, our subscriber platform, which we actually joined because we were so heavily censored, we couldn't say shit anymore. And then they offered us the platform, said, come on to Locals, you can say anything here. And we loved that. And we thought it was just going to be a place where we were going to have uncensored information, but it became so much more than that. It's like a family now. And the folks that are on there, they're all in their journeys. They're healing, they're growing food, they're traveling, they're creating communities and beautiful, companies with beautiful visions. And it's a real community now. And they all inspire each other and inspire us. It's really like a family. So if you want to check it out, inspired.locals.com. We'd love to see you there. We also talk about our farm life here, our journey here, the chickens, the goats, the gardens, the land, the fails, the wins, and everything in between. So if that speaks to you, come join us there. All right. We love you. We appreciate you. And we'll be back with you again very, very soon. Christine and I would love to invite you into something really special. We started a new show on Locals called Farm Tales, where we share the real stories from our homestead, the animals, the garden, the beauty, and even the funny mishaps along the way. Just like all of our work, it's about living consciously in harmony with nature and creating a life of true freedom. Please click the link down below and join us for Farm Tales on Locals. We would love to see you there.